Hello everyone, and welcome to this video on user types in IDEAScript. I thought I would do a video on user types because it's something that is not used that often. It's kind of a hidden little feature, gem, depending on how you want to use it. And I thought I'd do a video on this to sort of talk about it a bit more and give you kind of a basic scenario where you might want to use it. So I'm going to create an IDEAScript from scratch. So I'll just go into the IDEAScript. Now for this, I'm going to be using the language browser quite a bit because it has lots of the basic information. So if you are not using the language browser now, then you should, because it is your best friend when you're creating any type of IDEAScript because it has all the different information that you want. So let's go look at what the user type actually is. So it's under procedures and it's under type. So it defines a user-defined data type containing one or more elements. So what this is it allows you, there's the developer of an IDEAScript, to go and create your own variables that can contain multiple elements within that variable, which is really cool. The way you do it is you would create a type, user type, and user type, so you'd give it a name. Then in here you would enter in all your different individual variables that you would want within your type variable. And here we've got an example here where we got the full name. So we got the last name, first name, middle name. So we've got different elements here. So that's one way of doing it. The example that I'm going to be using is holding the information for a field. Because with the different fields, you have like all types of information, like the name of the field, the description, is it character, is it date, is it Boolean, and so on. So this is kind of a perfect place to put if you want to capture all the information, and you could create kind of a reusable little function that will go read a file, gather all the information for the different fields, put it into the type, and then do something with it. In this instance, in this example here, I'm just going to display the contents, but you could go in and do stuff with it. Now, where the real power is for this type, and it doesn't say anywhere in here, but it's something that I figured out, is that you can actually have arrays of a type. So you could have an array that holds a type for the field information, and it holds all the different fields within a file. So if you're just reading the documentation here, it looks like you'd probably have to create, a different variable, a type variable for every field that you'd have within your database. This is not true. You can create it within an array and then have it all within the array. And this is where I think you really get the power of the type function. So what I'm going to do is, in this example, is I'm going to create a basic script that allows you to select a file. It will create a type of an array that will hold all the field information. So we'll create a type of field. We'll create an array to hold all the information. We'll create a function that allows you to go and get all the information from the database and put it into an array, and then we'll just display all that information through a message box. So that's what we're going to do. So first off is I'm just going to minimize this, I'm just going to create kind of a basic script. I'm going to add on my option explicit. I always add this on all my scripts because this makes sure that if I make any typos or anything like that for variable names, it gets caught right off the bat. I'm going to create two basic variables, global variables. One to hold the file name of the file that I select, and another one is an array. Actually, I'm going to wait because I haven't created. I'll wait before I create the type before creating that. Now I'm just going to create my infrastructure first. So we do need a little function here that allows us to go select the file. So I'm just going to create a function here called select file. It's easy enough. So what I'll do is it's going to return the name of the file that the user selected. So actually I need one object here to hold the file explorer. And then I'll just set object equals, and if we go in and there is, if you don't already know, if we go back into the language browser and go to the IDEAScript, there's a section called Common Dialog. Where is it? It's Common Dialogues, and there's one here to get the File Explorer. So if you ever want code to obtain the File Explorer, this is where you get your code here. And this is what I'm just writing out. I'm just shortening it a bit. I don't have all the comments and everything there. And I'll just set object equals nothing. When I open up an object, I usually close it at the same time just to make sure I don't forget that. And then I'll just do select file equals to object and it's file explorer. And then I'll just call that my main menu. So here what I'm just going to do is I'm going to use the global, that variable that will hold my file name, and I'm just making it equal to this function here. Oops. And let's just make sure that this part is working before we continue on. So let's just go try this out. Let's go save this. I'll just save it as new script because I've already created this. So I'll just run the script. Here I'm getting the open database. Perfect. I select my file and it's returning me the file name. Perfect. And this is usually how I go about when I'm creating my files. I'll test it. I'll write some code and I'll test to make sure it works and everything. Okay, so now let's get into the type. So what I'm going to do here is I've already written this out, so I'm not going to bother typing it in and wasting all your time. But I'm going to go in and I've already created a type called field. It holds all the different information for the field. And where I got all this information, again, is if I go into the language browser, and if I go into fields, here I can see the decimals, description, equation, has action field, character. So all this information here, the only one that I didn't do was the remove action field, because that actually is not something that you play, it's something that you do to the field where you remove the action field. All the information is either, you're either getting or setting within the field. So here we're just getting all this information. So I just created different variables for each one. I went through, it's like the decimal, so the decimals would be an integer, description would be a string, equation would be a string, hash action field is Boolean, all the is Boolean, length is an integer, name is a string, protected is a Boolean, type is an integer. So I just created variables for each one. And I put an F in front of them, mainly because some of these, like is numeric, what other one is there's a couple of is date I think in here, are actually keywords. So if I didn't put an F in front of them, then the editor sort of gets confused and thinks it's keywords. So that's why I put an F in front of all of them. And that's how you create a type. So now I've got a type of field that holds all this information here, which is really cool. And from that, then I can create my variable, because right now I've just created a type. I haven't actually created a variable to hold this. So I'm just going to create an array variable, fields. I added an S so that it represents all the fields as field. So now I'm going to have an array, and each item or element in the array will be able to hold all this information here, which is really cool. So now, next thing I want to do is I want to just go grab this information from the database. So I've already got the database name. So now I'm just going to create a function. And I'll just say get fields. And the different variables I need in here is I need one to hold the database. because we'll be opening up the database. We need the table to hold the table information. We need an object for the field as field. We need an integer to hold the number of fields. Oops. And we need another integer just because we're going to have a loop. So we'll be looping through here. So I'll just use that to loop through everything. So that's the variables I need. I mean, a bit higher. So now let me start creating this. So first off is, and if we go, and if you're not too sure how to do this, all I did is, like, suppose I want to go grab the field name. I went and looked here. Okay, to get the field name, first I got to get the database. Then I got to get the table. And then I got to get the field. So this is exactly what I'm going to do as part of the script. So first off is I'm going to go grab the database. So that's the client dot opened database, and this will be the file name. Since it's a global variable, I can use it wherever I want. Since I've created an object, I'm going to close it up right away. My next one is I need to create the table, because if we go look in the language browser and we go look at the table def, so the table def gets us the field information. So it gets a field by name or it gets a field by index in the table definition. So this is how we would get the field information. So first we get the table from the database, then we get the fields from the table. So we have to build these up as the objects. So the table is actually part of the database. So that's why we equals db equals dot table def. I'll say table equals nothing. I'm not going to set up the field yet because the field is actually part of the loop. Now, one thing with the table is, if I go back in the language browser again, is we got the count. Gives us the number of fields in the table definition. So that's perfect. So I need the number of fields equals table.count. Now I know how many fields are going to be in the in this. So now I can go in and redefine my array with the number of fields. So I can now tell my array how many items that it will hold. So I'll just do the redim. So this allows me to redimension the array. And I'm going to say count, and I do count minus 1. The reason I do count minus 1 is because arrays start at 0 versus fields start at 1. So if there's 10 fields and I want to store them all into an array, that means I need 9 items, or fields defined as 9, because it goes from 0 to 9, which is actually 10 elements or 10 items within the field. So that's why I do the minus 1. Now I can do the loop for I equals 0 to count minus 1. Remember, because it's going to be 1 less. And then I'll do next I. Now, for each one here field, now I can set the field. So I'll get set field equals to table, whoops, dot get field at. I'm going to using the get field at, because the get field at field by index in the table definition. So this allows me to loop through each one of the fields. And then I'll just do I plus 1, because first item, oops, this should be I, not 1. So first item I would here would be 0, but the first field is actually number 1, so that's why I got to add 1 to it. And I'm just going to go set field equals nothing. I'm just clearing them all off at the end. I could probably do it the same thing after I've gone through all this if I wanted to. So the next part is I'm going to be adding all the items here. Let's go back to the language browser and go look at our field again. I'm going to be adding all these items here to my array. And I've already created the code, so I'm just going to copy it because I don't want to bother typing it all out again and just wasting your time. Oops. Here we go. So here, so this is how I access it. So it is the array name, then in brackets the element of the array, dot the item within the type. So this is fields fields 1 dot decimals equals field decimals. Description, equation, has equation field, and so on. So this is how I place all the different items in the array. And you know, it's a bit different from normal arrays because we're using the dot notation. So it does look a bit like an object, and it does have, you know, some tendencies that it is an object and everything like that. I don't really think it really can be considered an object, but you know, some people may want to do it. And that's all there is to it for getting the information. So let's actually just call this to make sure it runs. We have no syntax errors, so we'll call get fields. And then I'm just going to do a message box and say, you know, script complete. I'm just going to save that. And now let's just go run the script. I select the file. Oh, script complete. Okay, so that seems to be working fine. Now the real test will be when we go and actually display the different fields. So I've created another function, and this function here I've already created. I'm just going to copy it and paste it in here and explain it instead of you watching me type it all in here. So I'll just end up calling it call display fields. Let me just save that. So what I've done here is I've created two variables. One is an integer to loop through all the different elements within the fields array, and then just a string variable to hold the message, the pop-up. So I'm just looping through from I0 to U-bound field. So this will give me the number of items within the fields. And this item, in this instance, I forget how many items there are offhand. So there's 12 fields here. So this would go from this would be returned like an 11. And then from here, I've just added on the message. So the first one's name. So I'm giving it, you know, what is the item within that array. Then I'm outputting what is the actual variable. And I'm adding on the character 13. So each one would be on its own separate line. And finally, I'm just displaying the message box. So we'll get a separate message for each one of the fields. So now let's just try running it. So we'll get the general ledger, click on open. So here we go. So here we got the general number, JE numbers. So this is the field. See, there's no decimals. There's no description, has no equation. Action field's false, is a character false. We go here, it's numeric, shows it's numeric. Length 8, by default, numeric. Time, any of the numeric ones are 8. Protected, true. So protected, it's interesting because it means, you know, is this an edible field or not? If it was an edible, it would show false. And type 4, so the type actually it shows you all the different field types. So each different field type, like you know, virtual numeric, virtual character, virtual date, virtual time, would have a different type here. Now if I click on OK, it'll show me the date. Same thing, the equation here shows me the mask, year, month, day. So this is how it's internally stored within IDEA. As you can see, the display is based on the regional formatting. So this is actually different, but internally, the internal storage of the date is by year, month, and day. And we can see it's a date. Length again is 8, protected true, type 5, so that would be a date field. The next one is a time field. Here again too. Now you notice there's no actual equation for a time field because IDEA actually stores this as a number. So it says it is time, but it stores it as the number of seconds, and then it'll calculate the number of seconds and display it based on your regional settings. So we got the period, source, account number, account description, amount. Here we got 2 decimals, so that's all right. Description, user, and finally add month. So these are virtual fields. So we can see here, here's the equation field that was used to create this virtual field. See, it shows it's a virtual field, it's a date field. And finally, the same thing here for years. I was just fooling around, doing something, trying to figure something out for a user of IDEAScripting.com. So yeah. Yeah, so different type and everything like that. Then okay, and the script complete. So as you can see, the user type actually can be used, and it is quite useful when it's combined with an array. When it's not combined with an array, then I don't really find many uses to it because it becomes very verbose, because you always have to have the dot notation there. You know, it's got the variable name dot whatever the field may contain. You know, in that general case, I find it's just easier to just have like individual variables. But when you combine it as an array, like I'm now able to create an array that holds all type of information. It's holding string, boolean, integer in there. Generally with an array, you know, if you select an array, you know, it's only a string array, integer array, long, whatever it may be. This allows me to create arrays that hold different types of information, which I think is really cool. And I think this is kind of a great kind of example scenario for where to use it. Now, I'm going to post this script, so I'll link it in the description below, so if you can go download it, and you know, you can use it in your own scripts to do you know, getting the field information if you want, or if you do use this and adapt it for other scenarios, you know, please add a comment down below and let me know how you're actually using it, what type of scenarios. That would be really cool. So anyways, hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks.